Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. The Canadians lose a game that they should have won, really. Kind of a frustrating one there. They lose 4-3 against the St. Louis Blues in game 28 here. This is definitely a winnable game, so it's really disappointing to see how this game came along for us. Just really, the way you can look at it is the Canadians played a pretty respectable game for 58 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever, but a shit stretch to start the second period is the difference maker in this one. They scored 2 goals within the first 65 seconds of the second period. That ended up being the difference maker, obviously, in a 4-3 win. We ended the first period playing pretty well. I feel like, there's definitely some other chances in that first period that we could have come up with a goal on. But, I think we capitalized on enough of the chances, pretty much throughout the entire game. I mean, obviously, not scoring in the second period, but in that first period, we found 2 goals here. Lane Hudson had a really nice one. Bolduc found him kind of cutting up the middle from the point. He's able to make a nice, forehand, backhand move all alone in front and beats Binnington with the backhand there. A really nice goal from him. And then Cole Caulfield, with the clock winding down in the first period, is able to find, a nice, it was a nice passing play there. Dobson found Suzuki down low, and he one-touched it back up to Caulfield, kind of in that bumper position. It was a 5-on-5 goal, but he was able to find a shot that goes, right underneath the arm of Binnington, which gives us a 2-1 lead going into that second period. But, for whatever reason, nobody was home upstairs, going into the start of the second period. Dylan Holloway scores pretty much right away, and then Buchnevich scores to make it 3-2, literally 30 seconds after that. So just absolutely unacceptable. There's no excuse for that, especially considering the fact that it's already a known issue. The Canadians are not solid in that second period. We need to be aware of those things, and for whatever reason, we just can't seem to figure out how to play defense in that second period. It just the two goals within 65 seconds to start the second period is just unacceptable. Just flat out unacceptable. There's just no excuse for that. And I just don't really understand how that happens. We kind of find our way back a little bit, but for the most part, the Blues pretty much dominated all of that second period. I felt like, there was really nothing going on for the Canadians, and it all boils down to, obviously, the defense has those collapses in the start of the period to get us, down by 1, but then, going into the rest of that period and then even into the third period, it just felt like the Canadians were just allergic to getting the puck out of their own zone and actually just attacking and playing offense. There are times, it's not just this game, it's a lot of games throughout this season where the Canadians, it just feels like the pressure that the Canadians are feeling is just so immense that it's just there's just nothing that they can do to attack into the offensive zone. And I think, you never know, but I think other teams have kind of gotten the memo on the Canadians and, what they can do to kind of be successful against us. And I think the one thing that the Canadians are being scouted on right now is their inability to, handle pressure in their own zone. I think, more than in other games, if you watch other games other than the Canadians, I feel like more so than that, I feel like the other teams are really pressuring the Canadians defensemen when they're trying to regroup in their own zone or just break out of their own zone. It just feels like sometimes, especially, disappointingly so, but especially when Dobson and Matheson are on the ice, it feels like the pressure is just a little bit too much for them at times. Not mentally, but like when the forecheckers are coming in, it just feels like there's no way for them to get the puck out, and there's just so many chances that we have to just simply just flip the puck out of the zone or do something with it, get a breakout, whatever. It feels like instead of getting those opportunities to go our way, we kind of just retreat and try to make a bunch of different escape turns and all that kind of stuff, and we end up losing the puck or not making the greatest change, and then or we just I think the one that happens most often is we get the puck out, but then we make a bad pass, or the way we get the puck out is just by sending it down the ice, and then we give it right up to the defenseman on the other end, and they're able to just start a regroup and put it right back into our zone. And those things add up. It's just they're not always dangerous chances that the other teams are getting against us, but if we're not playing offense, eventually we're going to get scored on. And that's kind of what happens into, the third period. A little over halfway into that third period, Braden Shen scores on a 2-on-1 opportunity, and it's just a matter of we're just not attacking enough. And like when you don't attack enough, and you just let the opposing team, regroup and just re-enter your zone over and over again, and just chisel away at your defense, then eventually you're gonna get scored on. And obviously, another reason for that is because we have our like fourth line out there. I think that's another thing that you could consider for sure is just, why we're rolling four lines in a game where we're down by one, with less than 10 minutes to go. And that comes down to, a coaching decision, obviously. I think that's just the way it goes. But like even before that, it's just like for whatever reason we're just incapable in certain situations. Sometimes it looks great, like especially like there were times in this game in the first period, and then kind of close to the end of the game when we did score that one goal from Dobson there. There are definitely times where the Canadians are able to find ways to attack and make the other team feel it, feel our offensive pressure. But there are other times where just like there's just nothing we can do to get onto the attack and tilt the ice back in our favor. It's just like it feels like it's just all coming downhill at us. And we aren't able to fend that off. And I mean, like, Dobich played a great game. I feel like defensively we weren't even that bad. It's just it all comes down to like we got to be able to take care of the puck in our own zone, and just find a way to transition into offense. It just feels like we're just surviving every attack that comes our way. We're just trying to live for the next whistle over and over again, but we can't. Like it's just a non-sustainable defensive strategy. And I think that it's definitely something that we need to, find a way to be a little bit better at. It's just like, breakouts under pressure and just the mentality of get the puck in deep. Like not every, zone entry needs to be like a clean zone entry that leads to like this beautiful passing play or whatever. Sometimes it's just you get the puck in deep and then you work it, and make the, the St. Louis defense, actually have to work a little bit and, work to get a breakout going in their favor. And then we can put pressure on them. And we could talk about this all day, but the biggest thing is just like we just play too much in our own zone at times, and like for how prolific this offense can be. I think this is, the Montreal Canadiens as they are right now have the capabilities of being one of the best offensive teams in the league. I truly believe that, but it's just all a matter of are we able to put ourselves in positions to be lethal offensively, or are we playing too much time defensively? And that's the biggest thing. I feel a lot of times, we have our top six out there, but then our top six, like, Cole Caulfield, great player. We love Cole Caulfield, but he is not known for his, his defensive play. That is not why we put Cole Caulfield out on the ice. And there are too many times where we have that top line out or the Demidov line out or whatever, and we're spending all of that time, trying to break out the puck, and then we're like Cole Caulfield is just doing laps around our defensive zone trying to find a guy moving around as they kind of just play pass and catch. Like we're just trying to find our way to get an intercept for the puck or whatever, and it's just like we're not putting ourselves in positions to be lethal offensively in a way that we know that we can be. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. I think in general, I feel like this season more than other seasons, we've kind of seen a little bit of that, like the lack of experience that Martin St. Louis has. Obviously, I think he's a great coach, all things considered. I think he does a lot of great things for us, but I think this season is a bit of a learning curve for him that he hasn't had to deal with in previous years, because in previous years we had no expectations, right? Like, even into last year, nobody really expected the Canadiens to be a strong team that was competing for anything really. But now, like the expectations are different, right? Like we made the playoffs last year, and the expectation is absolutely that Canadiens make the playoffs again this season. Obviously it wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world if we don't, but like we definitely want to be a playoff team. And now that we know what it's like, and we know that this team is capable of doing so, we want to have a repeat of that effort. So that's what it's all about. Like we got to find a way to make that happen. And I feel like it's a bit of a learning curve for Martin St. Louis to find a way to play our players in a way and have strategies that work in a way that get us wins consistently, instead of having these stretches of losses and stretches of wins and all that kind of stuff. Like when you look at, the best teams in the league right now, those are teams that are finding a way to win every night. Like obviously, even the Colorado Avalanche don't win every single game, right? Like they take a lot of games to overtime and all that kind of stuff, but they're finding ways to get points, and they're finding ways to be consistent. Even after a loss, they bounce back and they find a way to get a win. And I feel like the Canadians right now, and it's obviously, partially because of how young this team is, but right now it feels like they're very, like emotion driven. They're very, momentum driven, right? Like when things are going well, things are going well. We're able to make things happen. But then as soon as things stop going well, either, over the course of a stretch of games or within one game, like I feel like this game is a great example of that. Like, right, like we go, we're up 2-1, we're feeling good, and then the period ends, we come back, and all of a sudden we're down 3-2, and then we play the entire period like shit because we're down, and now we're feeling like the momentum isn't quite on our side, and we're not really able to harness that and bring it back, to our end of things, and kind of like retake that momentum. And it took pretty much almost until the end of the third period for us to kind of regain that momentum. And obviously it took a 6-on-5 to really get a big stretch that was going in our favor, but too little too late. So I think that's a big thing that comes with experience, and this team is definitely lacking in experience. A lot of rookies on this team, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's the next step that the Canadians need to take, is finding a way to be consistent over a game to game basis, and not letting momentum and emotion and all that kind of things dictate the way that we play over a long stretch of time, even within a game, and also in between games over like a week stretch or more like that. So those are my biggest takeaways there. It's definitely disappointed to not get any points playing against a team that is definitely near the bottom of the league in standings, but that's just the way things go. You're going to lose games sometimes. And I think, like as I've kind of always said, after a loss this season, it's how we respond to that is the biggest indicator of what's to come. And we have a huge game coming up as well on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central Time anyway, against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Bell Center. That is a massive game, which could be it could be a playoff matchup. In the end of April, depending on how things shake out at the end of the season. But also, like this is the number one team in the Atlantic right now, the team that has kind of generated a little bit of separation against the rest of the pack. And if we're able to get a win against a team like that, we are putting ourselves in a great position, to stay, at the top of this Atlantic division. And like every point obviously matters so much right now, because like a win for us today would have put us at number one in the Atlantic with 35 points. Instead, we stay at 33. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the wild card, like the worst team in the Atlantic right now has 26 points, and that's not that far away from the best team with 39, or even in the Atlantic the best team is only 34, right? So it's very, very tight. To every point matters, especially when you're playing against an Atlantic Division opponent. We got to get those points. We got to get those wins. So it's a big game coming up. And I think the biggest things I'm looking for in that game from the Canadians is, can we play consistent, which, obviously has been since day one. We've been asking for a consistent performance. But, I think the biggest thing that I want to see in this game is not letting the other team, dictate our play over a long stretch of time. We need to be able to, take control of our own game or of our own performance, and, find a way to turn things around if they're not going well, but also, keep things up when they're going well, and, finding ways to play good defensively, to score goals, play in Tampa's end of the ice. So that's what I'm looking for on that one, but, that all remains to be seen. So that's all I got for you guys today, and I will see you hopefully after another big win, big Atlantic Division win against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Tuesday.